Jeroboam and Rehoboam, they are completely different people from completely different places. Okay, so the problem is we've got, when we learn these names, there's going to be very specific things we're going to have to remember about them. So, all right, the divided kingdom. So we are 500 years into Israel's history. 500 years at this point. They've been doing a lot of stuff, not always that great. We've actually gone past we've gone past Saul and David. We're going to be at Solomon. We're starting at Solomon. Now, the reason why I'm starting at Solomon is because this is really where the prophets begin to come out. My brother-in-law's here too. Whoa, what a great guy. So, this is really where the prophets come to light the most. Before, we're not going to see that many prophets in action, like we will at this point. This is not where the prophetic books start, though. The prophetic books are going to start about 30 years before major disaster. Okay? We'll get into that next week and the week after. We go through Elijah and all that, Elijah and Elisha. But the key is, there was 500 years of history at this point. Now, the thing is with this split, if you don't know about the divided kingdom, let's just say that it's the worst thing that could have happened to them and ever set everybody up for Israel to fail and Judah to fail. They're eventually going to be going into exile and all of that just because of this stuff, what's going to happen here. So, but the problem is, it's not just one little spark that does it. It didn't just, when Rehoboam makes his bad decisions, that's not really what's going to cause everything. It started actually before that, and we're going to go into a little bit more of that to help you to understand. So, Ephraim and Judah. Now, if you've done the homework from the first week, I want everybody to go through Genesis 48 and Genesis 49. Because those are the two of the most important chapters of the Old Testament. They're going to go over not only who all of the different tribes are going to be, but they're also going to go over where they're going to be located. And that's important. So, the two most important people that we will have to learn about are going to be Ephraim and Judah. Okay? So in Psalm 114, when Israel came out of Egypt, Jacob from a people of a foreign tongue, Judah became God's sanctuary, Israel his dominion. Now, interesting, remember we talked about a few weeks ago that when they say, if before the divided kingdom, when they say Israel, they mean everybody. After the divided kingdom, this is where things change. When they say Israel, they mean the northern tribes. Okay? So after this point, so when Psalm says this, Israel his dominion, so Israel, they're talking prior to it, not just the 10 northern tribes. But Judah will be a very big part of this, and same with Ephraim. Now let's talk about this. So Judah, 48:14, but Israel reached out his right hand and put it on Ephraim's head. So here was the thing. Joseph's son, Joseph was loved by everybody. Why? Because Joseph is the one who saved everybody. And so Joseph's kids got the two best places in all the kingdom. They really did. Manasseh got the most because he was firstborn, and Ephraim got the best land because he was second. But what happened was that Jacob put his hands like this and blessed Ephraim first. That is going to be extremely important, because it's going to set Ephraim up as the cool kids, the good people, the great ones. However, Judah will be where God wanted to put his ark eventually. So Judah is where everything is going to come out of. But that doesn't happen for a very long time. So let's go into how that happened. So the ark, the whole part is the ark. You got to remember, in the Old Testament, the Ark of the Covenant is where the presence of God stayed. Remember when we talked about polytheism, that the presence of God, that they basically had to continue to try to seek the presence of God, need to look for presence of God. God did it very differently than polytheism in the Old Testament of the other guys. The other guys, they were searching all the time for gods, but God said, I'm always with you. And he did this through the ark. So his presence was with the ark. Now, the ark was located in Shiloh. Sorry, my fault. So don't do that. The ark is located in Shiloh, which is in Ephraim. Okay? Shiloh, which is in Ephraim. So think about this. Where the ark was, all the festivals had to happen at that place. Meaning everybody, every year, 3 times a year, had to go to the place where the ark is. And that was Ephraim. So think about it. You are the predominant place. Everybody comes to you. Most people, everybody, Israel comes to you 3 times a year. You're the cool kids on the block. Okay? So, also, sometimes the ark would actually end up in Bethel, which is also in Ephraim. So all of this stuff was happening in Ephraim. And this went on for 500 years. We don't even know what 500 years is in this country because we haven't been around for 500 years. That's how far back this went through all the judges and even the early kings. So the key was that Ephraim was the place to be. They thought they were the cool. Yeah, I mean, they were. The ark was there. But remember what we went through last week. We said God made it very clear. He will state where it's going to end up. The thing about God, it may seem like it's going to take a while, but eventually he always does what he says he's going to do. You can always trust it. But what happened was while the ark was at Shiloh, a bunch of the elders, the Philistines came in. The Philistines around 1200 BC actually came in, very, very within like 100 and some years prior to this. They came from all these places, and this big old people called the Philistines came in there. Not Palestine. There's no such thing as Palestine. That was Greek, what the Greeks said it was. But the Philistines, they came in, and they were a big problem for Israel. So they had they were attacking Israel, and so the elders, not the smartest people in the world. Now, understand that this is under Eli. It's not under Samuel. This is under Eli. The elders took the ark and said, hey, let's bring God with us. That was a big, you don't do that. Not a good idea. And because they did it, and actually Eli's sons, Phinehas and Hophni, they took it in, the Philistines captured it. No more ark for a while. It's gone. And we actually had to get King Saul to come in. King came in, Saul came, brought it back, and then he died, and then David actually ended up having to come and bring it. And that is where David took it to Jerusalem, which is in Judah. So all of a sudden, 500 years, Ephraim is the cool kids, but now guess where everybody has to go? Judah. To go to Judah. That is a big problem. So even in Isaiah, hundreds of years later, it's well known that there was jealousy of Ephraim and Judah. Ephraim was jealous of Judah. Ephraim's jealousy will vanish, and Judah's enemies will be destroyed. Ephraim will not be jealous of Judah, nor Judah hostile towards Ephraim. Eventually, that's what's going to happen. But at this point, it was not that way. There was a lot of problems. So, and again, in Deuteronomy, you must not worship the Lord your God in their way, but you must seek the place the Lord your God will choose from among all your tribes to put his name. And let's go back to Judah real quick. The scepter will not depart from Judah. Scepter is a kingship. Now we know what they're talking specifically here is going to be David, but eventually the scepter under the guy, Jesus will come and end up taking all of that, and it all comes from Judah. Now remember, here we have a problem. 500 years it was in Ephraim. Now David brings it to Judah, Okay? From there, Solomon builds the temple, and there's where the ark was going to stay forever. That was the idea. 500 years. So this is one of the most important things to understand. Ephraim and Judah's rivalry and Solomon's sins will lead to the tribe splitting. There's going to be a few things we're going to go to tribe splitting, but just understand when, for instance, when civil war happens, it's not always so easy. Even in our country, when the Civil War happened, it wasn't 100% about slavery. It was about a bunch of different things. Okay? And there was a long time coming. It was decades in the making. Same with this. This is a long time coming. The thing is, Israel, by this time, once they split, will never come back to where they were before. Ever. They will never return to God. That's where the prophets are going to come in very, very importantly, because God is going to want to try to bring them back. Okay? Judah's kings, on the other hand, will wax and wane. They're going to have some good, some bad, but eventually they're going to end up in the same place as Israel. All because of this whole thing went on. So what we're going to do today is we're going to be talking about 1 Kings chapters 11 through 14. Now, there is so much information in this little bit, in these 4 chapters. They're very long, and I'm not going to put all the verses up because it's just going to take up massive pages because there's so much. So I highly recommend that you please go and read this 1 Kings 11 through 14. This will go over everything that we're going to go over today. There will be a few verses up, but I'm not going to put that many, only because we just don't have time and space for this. Solomon, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Last week, the very last thing I said, one of the last things I said was the bad king Solomon. Solomon was actually a very bad king in the end. Pardon me? Nope, he did not. That's why he's the good, the bad, and the ugly. Yeah. Solomon was a dichotomy, meaning he was two completely different things. Two things that were going on with Solomon. On one hand, he was the wisest man in history. People would come from all over to his wisdom. The guy was smart. He wrote Proverbs. And we think he might have actually... Yes, ma'am.
Well, and that's what he asked him for.
Exactly. Right, and that's...
Right, serving him. The reason he was the wisest man in history was because that's what he asked for. He didn't ask for riches, he didn't ask for power. He said, please give me wisdom to lead your people well.
So that's the Solomon the good, just like Jackie said. The first 20 years was good for Solomon. He asked for wisdom. He built the temple. He finished the royal residence. He did some good things. Solomon completed the temple of Jerusalem, dedicated it to God. That's a picture of it. If you can see how small the people are there, that means how big that thing was. It was huge. Solomon's temple was the best. Even when they came back from exile, it was nothing like that. Even when Herod rebuilt it in 4 BC, it was nothing like that. Or actually 20 BC, sorry. It was nothing like that. So the key is, guys, this was amazing. And Solomon made it the best. And David had it ready. When God's going to start something, he's going to do it very well. But the problem is, one of the things that God said to Solomon, as for you, if you walk faithfully before me with integrity of heart and uprightness, as David your father did, and do all the things I tell you to do, I will establish your royal throne over, note the word, Israel. Remember, when they say Israel at this point, that's everybody. Okay? After this point, Israel is going to be the north. Okay. However, and this is just a summarization, if you do not, everything's going to go wrong. So sadly, Solomon chose the other side. All right, Solomon the bad. Solomon's wives. Now, this is a very important thing. So Solomon married lots and lots and lots and lots of women. I mean, the guy, I can't even imagine having. Would you ever think about having 700 wives? I mean, it's like, Oh, plus, not only that, 300 concubines. Your wives are always going to be fighting with each other. You don't pay attention to me. Okay, come on, there's going to be problems. So, but the key is, God very specifically says, do not intermarry with anybody else. Now, let me bring one important thing to remember. Sadly, in Christian history, they thought that means you can't marry someone from a different race. That's not at all what it means. Because if you want to be technical, Moses married 2 different women from 2 different completely races. He married a Cushite woman down from North Africa. Then he also married his woman from Midian. Okay? This is not about that. We're going to see that it's all about people turning your hearts away from God. We're going to go into Ezra and Nehemiah, and in Ezra and Nehemiah, we're going to find that the same problem happened there. When you read the book of Malachi, or if you're Italian, Malachi, you're going to find that the very thing that God said, I hate divorce, because what they were doing is divorcing their women and going and marrying other people from other nations, causing them to turn their hearts away from God. It's all about unequally yoked. We all know that that's the very issue. So unequally yoked. They're going to turn your hearts away. They're going to turn you away. Don't do it. It has nothing to do with race, has nothing to do with color, has nothing to do with anything. Sadly, Christians did that for a long time. It's not a good thing. All right. Solomon the Ugly. Ooh. You always have to sit in the background. You got it, everybody knows that. Anyway, that movie. So, Solomon the Ugly. So, the thing is, he worshipped all the gods God said don't worship. Don't worship Baal. Remember we talked about him in polytheism in great detail. Don't worship Ashereth, which is his consort from polytheism. Remember we said that Baal and they thought they were married. Okay? Don't worship Moloch. Moloch was the guy that you feed your kids to. You burn your kids in the fire. So next week we're going to mention that in Moab, because they actually did that in Moab. They actually burned it. There was a king that did it here, but also a Moabite king did the same thing. Sacrificed his child in fire to try to gain favor from the gods. God's like, not a good thing. So, and the other gods of the Amorites. Now, when they see the word, we ever hear the word Amorite, that's the original inhabitants. Instead of going through the 10,000 of the Ite brothers, you got Jephite, and you got Danite, you got Paulite, you got Jackieite, Sandyite, all the ites. They kind of link them together as called Amorites in the Bible. So they kind of interchange that. But remember, the Amorites were the original inhabitants. And remember we talked about last week, they didn't get rid of them. A lot of them stayed, about 25% of them. Well, Solomon did not do good things to them either. He subjected the Amorites to slave labor. Now, he wasn't the first to do this, by the way. They did it from the very beginning in Judges. They took the place over, and instead of wiping them out like God said, we're going to send them into slave labor. They're going to do labor for us. That's what happened. Not a good thing. All right. So Solomon began this, and it was not a good thing. Okay. Solomon was wise, and he amassed significant amounts of wealth. The guy was stinking rich, which he used to make a very, very beautiful kingdom. However, all of it came at a price. Someone had to build his kingdom. Someone had to look for his gold. Someone had to go to sea and sail throughout the Mediterranean, grabbing all these stuff and more women for him. Someone had to do all that stuff. And if you look on the side there, King Solomon made 200 large shields, hammered gold. 600 shekels of gold went into each one. 200. Now, if you look at the bottom there, 600 shekels equals 15 pounds. At $30,000 per pound of gold today, one shield would cost $450,000. And he had 200 of them. By the way, Right after the kingdom is lost to Solomon's son, Egypt's going to come and take them all. Sad. Due to all of Solomon's ambitious goals, many nations rose up against him because he actually expanded the kingdom. He didn't just put the Amorites to slave labor. Back in the day, if you take over a country, they're going to go into slave labor too. And they weren't happy, and they did not want to do that. I don't blame them. So they made it very, very hard, and it caused a lot of people to dislike the king. So a lot of people, even in Israel, did not like the king because he made the Israelites. He made them do about 3 or 4 months a year of labor for him. Not for war. Maybe some of it might have been, but a lot of it was building. Okay? Solomon's idolatry became so acute, God would say that he's going to take the kingdom away from him. I mean, that's pretty bad. Solomon is the 3rd king, number 3. So it's pretty bad. So at this point, in comes Ahijah the Shilonite. We'll talk about him in just a minute. Keep your mind on this guy. So, and the other person that comes into all this is Ahoban. Ahoban was the manager of workforce for Benjamin. For Joseph, meaning Ephraim and Manasseh. He was the guy who managed all the people to do Solomon's work for them. He was a workforce organizer, whatever you want to call him. He was pretty high up there, and Solomon really liked the guy because he was very good at what he did. So one of the first things we learn about the prophets is that they were also involved in selecting kings. We're going to see that next week with Elijah and Elisha. They not only accepted kings, said you're going to be king in Israel, but they also went to other countries and set up king, like in Aram. That's how powerful these guys were. So Ahijah was going to give 10 pieces and he's going to give them to Ahobam to set him up as king. So he tore up 10 pieces of robe, gave it to him. That signifies the 10 tribes. Okay? The 10 tribes. Now remember, Levi is not part of one of those 10 tribes. Issachar actually gets kind of put into Judah, and really it's going to end up being Judah and Benjamin. That are the 2 tribes, extra 2. Solomon was still alive, and Jeroboam had to flee from him. So after Ahijah went to Jeroboam and said, you're going to be king, Solomon heard about it. He's like, that's not happening. And by this time, remember, he was pretty corrupt. So he went after him. So where do you think Rehoboam goes? To the very place God said, don't go back to, Egypt. And he stayed there. Now, we got to remember, Egypt was on the downslide, and they were looking for allies. So, hey, come on in. And they took him in, treated him like royalty, did great things, taught him a bunch of stuff. While he was down there, Solomon died, and Solomon's son Rehoboam became king. So Rehoboam becomes a king. Okay, Solomon, now R equals Solomon. Think Solomon, Rehoboam. Solomon, Rehoboam. Rehoboam basically became king, and after Solomon died, people from all over said, come to, where do you think they wanted him to come? They wanted him to come to Ephraim. Remember, because that was where all the big things happened. They went to Ephraim to crown him as a king, but they had one request. Now, this kind of puts Solomon into a very negative light if this is what they come to you and ask one thing from you. We're going to ask just one thing of you. Your father put a heavy yoke on us, made us work really, really, really hard, but now lighten the harsh labor. Ooh, ouch. Solomon wasn't that great of a guy. The harsh labor he put on us, and we will serve you. Now, if you're smart, you would think, Of course. Why wouldn't they? That's a good idea because, I mean, he wants to be king and everybody's going to be good, right? He wants to be king and everything else. I don't think so. Oh, man. Okay. Okay, it's not. Why is it not? Oh, man, my videos didn't work. Anyway, darn, I had a great Bugs Bunny video there. All right, well, hey, Bugs Bunny was there. So the thing is, he decided to use force. What an idiot. It's kind of like the guy that you're the biggest guy on the block and you just kind of subject everybody. Then you go back, people are not going to take too kindly to that. He sought two sets of people's wisdom. First, he went to his father's advisors. And his father's advisors were smart guys. They said, hey, do whatever they ask you to do, dude. Everything will be good for you. And it would have been. But instead, he goes to his friends. The friends. So what happened is he tried to use force to compel the people. And of course, everybody knows this, that he used the "my little finger is thicker than my father's waist" routine. Y'all know that, right? I'm kidding. It's a joke. No, of course you don't know that. The whole thing is, what that really means is this. My father was really bad. He was pretty big. But even this little bit of me is going to be worse than all of Solomon. That's what that means. Meaning that it's going to go bad for you. It was bad for you before. I'm going to make it even worse. It says, my father made your yoke heavy. I will make them even heavier. My father scourged you with whips. I will scourge you with scorpions. Eesh, not a good thing. So, of course, they said, sure, come on in, we'll make you king. No, that's not how it happened. So what they did is they basically, and this is, now notice where the anger against Judah comes into this. Look at what they said. What share do we have in David? Judah. They knew exactly, since he was come from Judah, he was from David. What part in Jesse's son? Ouch. Basically, then he says, to your tents, Israel, look after your own house, David, we're out of here. They left. Now, granted, he went out, he sent an organizer up there to try to get him to work. They stoned the guy to death. I think they got the point across. So basically, they didn't do it. So here comes Jeroboam. Comes to the rescue. Remember, God actually told him, when he gave them the 10 tribes, he said, look, God said to Jeroboam, hey, if you follow me and do what I want you to do, you're going to be good to go. That's a very important point to remember. God says, you're going to be good to go if you do what I tell you to do, everything will be fine. Okay, yeah. That's what he said to Solomon, unfortunately, when he saw what happened there. But Jeroboam was a politician who realized at some point the kingdom would eventually revert back to Judah. Why? Well, think about it. The ark was in Judah. The scepter will not leave Judah. He knew that. In the meantime, worship would continue in Judah. So the thing is, even though he could be king, and if he keeps everything status quo, everybody still has to go to Judah to do their worshiping 3 times a year. Remember, they used to go to Ephraim. Now they're going to Judah. Everybody all of Israel would have to go to Judah to do everything. The scepter would not fall from Judah. So he knows that if he does this, it could be bad down the road for him and his family. Now, granted, the smart thing would have done is just to obey God and do that. Now, I mean, so I know I've made bad decisions and not obeyed God, and it was disastrous. Well, sadly, that's what happened here. So instead of doing it God's way, he chose the safest path for himself. Now, one thing I've noticed about when I read the Kings and everything, it's just like politicians today. I'm not saying who, I'm just saying politicians in general. Everything's the safest path. A couple things they want to do is they want to make everybody happy. They want to do whatever they can to make everybody keep happy with them and continue to vote for him. But the problem is that the people eventually went back to Judah. He and his children's kingship would be in jeopardy. Eventually. So, he said, okay, let me make some changes. First thing he did, he set up 2 golden calves. One in the north, one in the south. One at Bethel, which is the southern part of Ephraim, and also one in the north, which is up in Dan, because Dan actually came from the Philistines, went up north in Judges. Then he said, hey, you know what? We don't really need Levites. Anybody can be a priest. Now remember, these are extreme no-nos, because the priesthood was supposed to be Levitical, Levites only. He changed it. So a couple golden calves, one on top, one on bottom. Make it. Now the reason is for that, think about it. They had to go to their feast days still. So what they did is, think about it. Wherever they are, they can make a choice between this one or this one. It's just whatever's closer for you guys. You guys can just do that one. Again, it's a politician. Hey, make it all easy for you. Don't worry, I'll take care of you. Got you covered. He also changed the feast days. Because the thing is, you don't want to have a feast day at the same time Judah has theirs, because they might want to get together and do things together. So they changed it, and 1 month later on each of the 3 feast days, which again was a big no-no. Finally, he built shrines on the high places, like we talked about. Remember, we talked about the high places. People, polytheism, they think the closer they are to the sky, the closer they are to the gods. So he made all these changes. But guys, one of the things I really want to make sure you understand is this. The people allowed him to do it. Because the first thing I remember when I started studying this going, well, why doesn't the people say, no, we're not going to do that because God wants us to do this instead? That's not at all what happened. The people allowed it. Why a golden calf? Well, the key is that from Egypt, golden calves would always have a rider on top of them, which is a god. They would be messengers of the god. So the golden calf would be for Yahweh. Yahweh's the messenger. Yahweh's the god. The calf was the messenger that brought Yahweh in. That's why there's no one on top of the calf. That's a big, big issue. Because God said, no, don't make any pictures of me. Don't make anything of me. So the calf was there. So think about it. That's the reason why they did the golden calf back in Exodus. Was the same thing. Here are the gods that brought you out of Egypt. The golden calf was very important in Egypt. And remember, Jeroboam came from Egypt. So he knew all this. Jeroboam was so bad that God thought it would be fitting for Chronicles and Kings to compare each king to the sins of Jeroboam. Think about it. For all history, the Bible is one of the most important books in the last 2,000 years. Everybody's read it, and everybody read that Jeroboam really stinks. Because what's going to happen, the kings are going to say, yeah, they're going to compare the kings to him. He stayed the same as him. He was the bad one. He led Israel to sin. He stayed the same. The next king, he stayed the same. Oh, this king is worse than Jeroboam. This king is... That's how they did it. because this guy was bad. So, when Jeroboam was actually officiating a ceremony and basically sacrificing to the golden calf, an unnamed prophet came in and said, "You did this. You're the bad guy." Now, Jeroboam's tried to threaten him, but God shriveled the hand of Jeroboam, and then he went and split the altar in half. God wanted everybody to know he's still God. Okay? This was before Elijah. This happened way before Elijah, about 100 years, or about 80 years before Elijah. And this is what you're going to start seeing here from now on. For the next couple hundred years, God is going to show himself as being more powerful than everybody else. We see Elijah with the prophets of Baal, God showed his power. We're going to see with Elijah and Elisha, God would show his power time and time and time and time again, because the hope is God was hoping to draw the people back to him. It's not about threatening and getting mad at him and pointing the finger. The idea was God was hoping to show them that no matter what gods they're serving, God is more important and he's more powerful. So when we get to Elijah and Elisha, please keep that in mind, because everything that they're going to be doing starting when we get to their next week is going to be, the idea is to show God's power. So, the prophet also at this time prophesied about the coming of Josiah. Josiah was a really good king. After David, I only say there's really two good kings that fully did what God wanted to do. That would be Hezekiah and Josiah. Josiah did a great job of it. So he prophesied 300 years earlier that this is all going to be gone up here. Remember, and this is exactly what happened. Israel was taken away to exile, and Josiah would come and clean up Judah for a little while. So then, of course, and this is a big thing that continues to happen in the Old Testament, is something bad happened to Jeroboam's son. So who do you think the first person they're going to go to is? Who is the most godly, the pure people who can take care of all that stuff? Let's go to Ahijah. So basically, it's like, oh yeah, even though I'm not going to do what God tells me to do, I'm still going to come and see what I can get out of you. So Jeroboam's son fell ill. Ahijah Ahijah was old and blind. He was an old guy, blind guy. And so what he did is sent his wife to him as a ruse, not telling who she was, made herself look different, and sent him to him to try to convince him that some guy needs help, and if you can convince the man of God that he can actually bless them and he could probably heal them. So she did it as a ruse. However, and this is a big thing to understand right here, this is what's going to happen in Elijah and Elisha constantly next week when we go through this. God showed Ahijah everything that's going to happen. Hey, this lady's coming to you. It's going to be Jeroboam's wife. This is what she's going to say, and this is what you're going to tell her. You got to remember, that's one big thing about God. God speaks to his people. God draws us to him. Unlike Islam and other places that God is way out there. God speaks to his people, draws his people, helps his people. He's very, very active. So Jeroboam and most of Israel did not fear God. The Lord commanded us to obey all these decrees and fear the Lord God so that we might always prosper and be kept alive. Remember, I'm hoping you guys read Deuteronomy 28 last week. If not, you may want to read it again. Because next week when we go through Elijah and Elisha, all the things that are going to happen to the people, including cannibalism, will happen because of this. Okay, so this is, just so you know, all the things that are going to happen down from this point on is all going to be due to what God said. If you do it my way, things are going to go well for you. If you do it your way, anyway. So, Jeroboam's wife went to Elijah for help with their son. So when Ahijah heard the sound of her footsteps at the door, "Come in, wife of Jeroboam." Remember, she was disguised. He knew exactly who she was. Now again, this is what God was going to do constantly through Elijah and Elisha. The countries are going to be saying, for some reason, why does they always know that we're coming? Why do they always know exactly what we're going to be doing? Because God is active. God shares with the prophets. God showed them, and everybody always knew. Got to remember, guys, remember the difference between polytheism and Jehovah or Yahweh. The big difference is he's alive, he's real, and he's active. All these other gods are not. They're going to spend their 2,000 people looking at sheep's livers. Remember that from polytheism? They're going to look at the sheep's livers to try to find out, what is God saying to me? But even with this, God can do it like this. Nothing. So God told Elijah to tell her, "I gave you the kingship." God says to Jeroboam, "I gave you the kingship. You have done more evil than all who lived before you." Ouch. We're actually 500 years in. 500 years. How would you like to say you're the worst guy in 500 years? That's pretty bad. "You have made for yourself other gods, idols of metal. You have aroused my anger and turned your back on me." So not only did the prophet go and tell him, but here's the point. The prophet went and told him, remember, he was officiating that. The altar split. That was not this guy, a different prophet. Split, his hand shriveled. Do you think he went back to God after that? No. Do you think he's going to go back to God after this? No. But God, the wonderful thing about God is gracious. Because if he would have went and turned, things could have got much better for him and for Israel, but he didn't. So, what he's going to tell them is that the dogs are going to be eating up your blood and your son's blood. I'm not your son. Now, the son, by the way, the son who was young, God made very specifically and said, "This son is right in my eyes, and I'm going to take him away from all this." God spared the life of his son. Because what's going to happen in the future with these kings is that they're going to murder each other. Then they're going to murder their kids. They're going to murder their grandkids. Their great-grandkids. They're going to murder all the people. God, the son of Jeroboam, God saved by taking him at that point. He didn't get better, he died. But God said, "I'm doing this as a favor to him." Because what's going to happen is you're all going to die because of what you did. And I'm going to cut off all your offspring. Now, one big thing, I know we're almost done. Sorry, I don't want to take too much more time, but just think about this. The big difference between Israel and Judah is the scepter will never leave Judah, meaning Judah's kings will be succession every time, all the way to Jesus. Judah kept going just as God said. Israel, They're never going to go past the 4th generation in Israel before they get killed because they're not following God. So the aftermath and the fate of Israel. Israel would never return to God. God would be active in the country and raise up 2 prophets to deal with issues. This is the next thing that's going to happen. This is what we're going to go into next week. Elijah and Elisha are going to come, and they're going to do these miracles, but I'm going to tell you, every miracle was a purpose, to show God's power, to try to draw the people back to him, to try to help the people. You're going to find that God was not unkind to the people whatsoever, but very kind. He's going to show his kindness through Elijah and Elisha. When is the bad stuff going to happen? 30 years before. That's when the prophetic books began. 30 years before. So, is there any questions over what? I'm sorry there's a lot of information, but any questions? Okay. Thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you guys next week. We're going to do Elijah and Elisha. Sure. Oh, let me go this way.
Joe comes at first. We got there at 3 o'clock. There's no lights that getting more and more direct.
He's expanding his business. That's opposite.
You're getting a lot of tax.
Big kid.
Lola, no. She's working. what phone do you have?
We're looking
What
at the
phone do
things.
you have?
Oh, I appreciate that.
The only reason why I'm gonna get one is he's got apps now that belong to
There's the happy family.
I'm okay about having it being able to be up there. I got one.
Well, they make it great.
Now, where exactly do they live?
They live in Frankfurt.
But at the time, I didn't get out of there till after 12:30.
Our friend was in a home.
There's some nice.
We aren't really sure what's going on with her.
Elijah's back.
Oh, is it?
He's in America. He's going to come back Saturday.
Very good. Glad he's safe. How are you? You like turtles? Did you eat? You didn't eat all of it.
Then it's going to help you when you're reading to understand who you're talking.
You all are really. This Friday. And how old will you be? 40?
I wasn't friends anymore, but I used to. Mine's
It'd be nice if they made a puzzle, because
Is it why they're 13,000? Because that's 13,000.